I'm Randy White,
I'm Connor Rives.
I'm Mateo Bani.
and this is the I-FormNation podcast. We're going to start off talking about our Super Bowl predictions, and then we're going to jump to the head coaching hires, and we're going to finish up with the AFC North quarterbacks.
All right, so the Super Bowl predictions. I'm going to start because I am going to be the villain, and I don't think it's going to be a close game at all. I think if you look at the three games that the Bengals played in the playoffs, they played the Raiders, they played the Titans, and they played the Chiefs. In each of the games, they ended, well, the last pass by the opposing quarterback was an interception. And what does that tell you? To me, that's luck. Derek Carr threw a stupid pass. Ryan Tannehill just looked fucking awful the entire game. And Patty Mahomes just went to sleep in the second half in overtime. So I think with the all-pro receivers that are on the Rams and the absolute just like the Bengals have no line, I think they are going to blow Joe Burrow out of the water. Like I don't see it being a close game, and I see the Rams just absolutely blowing them away.
Yeah, I disagree. I do have the Rams winning, but I think it'll be a much closer game. I've debated back and forth on if the Bengals will cover the point spread or not. I do have the Bengals losing, but I think it'll be competitive. I know there's a lot of criticism on Zach Taylor, but overall, I think they've done a really good job putting together effective offensive game plans to attack the defenses they've played, especially in the second half. I have faith in the Bengals to absolutely keep it close. But at the end of the day, like you said about last passes being picked, I think the Rams are going to be able to jump out to an early lead. And unlike the Chiefs, I see the Bengals really struggling to come back. Sean McVay has only lost one game in his coaching career with a lead at halftime. I expect the Rams to have the lead at halftime, and I do not expect another anomaly like they had in Week 18 versus the Niners.
Rams are definitely the better team, but when you're a team like the Bengals who just have so much momentum going, that is one of the scariest things. And Matthew Stafford all season has been very inconsistent. Passes he's thrown, he's looked like the Matthew Stafford we all know, where he's throwing these bombs like the Cooper Kupp and the first Buccaneers. But if you look at some of the throws, I feel like the Bengals can definitely bait him into some picks. I do see this as a lower scoring game than most people expect. I think the Bengals defense has been very underrated throughout the entire season. In this playoffs, they've shown that they can be a really elite defense. The Bengals offensive line is not good, like we all know, but they held up their own against a very underrated Chiefs defensive line. They allowed one sack, and that was to Chris Jones. Even though they allowed many pressures, the entire second half they were doing really well. I think Zach Taylor's ability to adjust this season has been very, very underrated, especially during games. We saw first that Chiefs game. First half, I feel like they were going a lot of deep shots like they did versus the Chiefs in the first game in the regular season. That worked. But he adjusted throughout, and they were a lot more quick passes to T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and made them come back in that game. So I feel like I actually had the Bengals winning this game, and mostly due to the momentum that they're going through the entire playoffs. I feel like the Rams and Matthew Stafford will make a couple mistakes. We saw it versus the Buccaneers. They had 4 fumbles or something like that. Matthew Stafford he always has like this one bad throw or dangerous throw. He had it versus the Buccaneers. It wasn't picked, but he always has these couple throws that just make you question sometimes. So I definitely can see the Bengals. I can definitely see the Rams even destroying the Bengals in this game, but I feel like the momentum that the Bengals have, and I feel like their offensive line has been playing underrated, especially versus the Chiefs. I think Joe Shiesty gets it done in the Super Bowl.
I absolutely see what you're saying. If a team is going to blow someone out, it's definitely the Rams blowing out the Bengals. But I don't think that'll happen.
I don't. I think people are overrating the Raiders and Titans just overall defense. I think at the end of the day, Joe Burrow was able to have success because both of those teams have no secondary. That it is abysmal for both of those teams. Just overall, their performance this year has not been great, and it's almost like one of those Washington football team situations or Washington Commanders, where they have the talent, they have the players to do good, but overall as a unit, they're not doing well. So I think when you look at the Rams' overall defense, their linebacker core, their defensive backs, just that pass rush that's just lethal. I cannot see Joe Burrow throwing for more than 250 yards and maybe a touchdown or two. 2 at most.
Well, here's what you got to remember about the Rams. It's not like their secondary is amazing. Outside of Jalen Ramsey, what kind of star power do they really have? Both of their starting safeties are injured. There's no real superstars in the secondary outside of Jalen Ramsey. So I don't like the Rams pass rush is absolutely better than the Titans, but the Titans had an extremely underrated pass rush and extremely underrated defense in general. But I don't see where the Rams secondary is dominant. They might have a great pass rush, but they do not have a dominant secondary. They got a guy playing safety right now who just came out of retirement. He's been retired for 2 seasons. So it's not like he's in prime shape to be covering Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, CJ Uzama. If he does play, he's questionable. I know he has that knee thing, so he's not going to be 100%. But the Bengals have a lot of weapons, and I feel like it's going to be very difficult for the Rams to contain that if they can't get out to a big lead early. If, like I said, if they do what the Chiefs did to the Bengals, I don't see the Bengals coming back. But if the Bengals can keep it close and continue to make the run game a threat, continue to screen the Rams defense, I think the Bengals can absolutely keep this close and potentially win the game.
I will say one thing, even though I'm picking the Bengals, I feel like the Chiefs DBs are solid. And when you have a pass rush like that, it gets elevated to a good defensive back unit. Because if you don't have to cover for 3 to 4 seconds, you're always going to look better than you are. So that's the one thing I'll say for the Rams. The thing is, the Bengals offense has the play calling, even though Zach Taylor, I think, is honestly a very overrated coach right now just because of how they led him. I don't think he has been that great this season. He's been calling some good plays. I mean, the Bengals offense has been running good plays at times. Sometimes it's a little questionable, but if you take a look at all their games, a lot of these games have been won because of their play calls. I mean, the screen passes to Jamar Chase and at good times to Samaje Perine versus the Chiefs in that first half, one of the biggest plays of the game. So the play calling has been good. I think it's good enough for the Bengals, especially with their ability to adjust during the game. I think they can definitely minimize. And of course, they have a game plan for Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey. I think mostly Jalen Ramsey for Joe Burrow. I think they're not going to be throwing to him at all. So that's my opinion on that.
See, I think the only way that it's a close game is if the Rams get an early lead, like a pretty sizable early lead. Because if you've paid attention over the course of the year, the Rams are a first half team and the Bengals are a second half team. And that's how they've played majority of the year. So if the Rams get off to a good start, that, as weird as it is, opens the door for the Bengals to make a great comeback, because that's what they've done all year. They've been down mostly by a little bit, but when the Rams get up, Sean McVay, kind of like a lot of the coaches in that division, kind of go a little bit conservative and, throw shorter passes, run the ball, instead of doing what they're good with Odell and Cooper Kupp and throwing that ball deep down the field. So I think that's the only way. And I don't see the Rams coming out to an early start. A lot of teams hold a couple plays the entire year to save for if they got late in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl, some special plays that they haven't really tested in game. And I definitely see the Rams pulling some of those out to try to mess with the Bengals defense. And usually that doesn't lead to some great success.
My last comment on the Bengals is a lot of the big plays for the Rams, I think, will be minimalized. The Bengals all season have been really good at covering the deep ball. I mean, Jesse Bates, one of the best safeties in football. Von Miller has been very good this year.
Von Bell.
My fault. My fault. You're right.
Yeah.
Eli Apple is awful, but they run a lot of zone coverage, so he'll be hidden in a way. But I can definitely see Matthew Stafford throwing one of those balls up. OBJ, Van Jefferson. So that's why my opinion comes from with the Bengals winning. I definitely can see them making some plays on defense, and then the offense will be enough to where they can beat the Rams.
I get what you're saying. And I know the criticism on Eli Apple, there's definitely some justification for that. Eli Apple struggled really the entire time he's been in the league. And he was frankly pretty bad in the first half versus the Chiefs. But he made, in the last play of the half, made probably one of the defensive plays of the game that really turned the tide in that game. The momentum completely shifted from that play on. If the Chiefs get so much as a field goal out of that drive, the game is probably over, and it's probably Chiefs Rams right now. But instead, they throw the ball inbounds to Tyreek Hill, and Eli Apple makes a huge tackle. The momentum completely shifts, and the entire Bengals secondary played really well the entire second half. And also in the Titans game, Eli Apple on the interception, Ryan Tannehill threw his third pick that set up the game-winning drive for Joe Burrow and the Bengals to get in the field goal range, and McPherson sends the championship. Eli Apple jumped the pass and knocked it into the air on a curl route, and it got picked. So Eli Apple, although he has gotten burned a lot, he's also made crucial plays for this Bengals team. And that's what it's come down to, is these secondary players, Von Bell, Eli Apple, Jesse Bates, of course, who I talked about a couple weeks ago. They've made big-time plays and big-time moments, and that's why they're here. And I think they'll continue to do that in the Super Bowl.
All right. I think that is sufficient for our Super Bowl. You guys want to give scores now, or do you want to save that for a post?
I'll give my score now. I have it a lower scoring affair, but not. I think they're gonna ramp up the scoring at the end of the game. 22-19 Bengals.
Randy?
This is tough. I think I'm gonna go actually 28-27 Rams.
All right, that's really fun.
Yeah, I've got, like I said, I don't think it's going to be close. I've got 31-14 Rams.
I could definitely see it.
Yeah, I think it
could happen.
The beginning of the game is going to really show us what the rest of the game is going to look like.
Absolutely.
I think Bengals take the lead 27-21, and Stafford throws a touchdown pass at the end. That's why I say 28-27.
It's going to be a coaching battle. Sean McVay's obviously the better coach, but Bengals' ability to adjust, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our head coach hirings. So, Matt, we'll start with you. You'll talk about the Bears for us.
All right, Bears hire Matt Eberflus, the coordinator for the Colts. One of the first hirings of the offseason. A little surprising for me. If I had to grade this, I would probably give it a C. I think it's just a very safe option. They didn't go like a Brian Dable or somebody like that. They went with the safer option and a guy that's actually, reports are saying he was really close with the Bears organization. So how do I feel about it? I don't know how I like it. I'm going to be honest, I really don't know how I like it. We'll have to see. But again, it's not like one of those big time splashes. I feel like the Bears, again, have been in this kind of mediocrity, especially with the quarterback position. I feel like they really needed somebody to – Justin Fields is such an interesting prospect. I feel like if you got a guy like a Brian Dable, I keep on using it because I really like the Brian Dable hiring, but a guy that has shown that he can progress a quarterback, especially like Josh Allen, who has had all the talent, but we didn't know if he could put it together. Justin Fields has all the talent in the world. The running game, we've seen his arm. His arm has potential, and already the running game you have to take into account. So a safe option at Matt Eberflus is just it's weird to me. And yeah, you got it, Connor.
Yeah, my big thing is I was looking for them to make an improvement with an offensive-minded coach. Obviously, Matt Nagy, an offensive mind, but he was just a horrible play caller, just completely abysmal. I find it funny when he took over the play calling 2 years ago, and David Montgomery was getting over 100 yards a game, and then Nagy took over the play calling, and he was like 70 yards or something a game after that. So they needed an offensive mind, and they needed someone for sure that could develop Justin Fields. And even if they wanted to go with Eberflus, they needed to get a solid big time offensive coordinator hire, and they didn't. I don't remember the name of the guy, but it's nobody I've heard of, which just proves that they screwed up. They needed somebody big to fill in that gap that they were missing with the head coach being an offensive guy.
I agree with you, Connor. But it's going to be really, really funny if that guy that we don't know, which means that he's obviously a nobody, if that does work out, we're going to be clowned like crazy. So, I mean, obviously I'm a Packers fan, so I'm rooting against the Bears' success. But as I I wouldn't like root against the failure of a person. So obviously you hope that the hire that you get works. They obviously liked what they saw in the interview. That doesn't mean a ton because they obviously liked what they saw in the interview with Nagy, and that ended in shambles. It's a weird hire to me. Like you said, I would have expected them to go offensive, more offensive-minded head coach to really develop Justin Fields. And that's the big thing there is they haven't really had a quarterback that has been great for them ever. They haven't had – I don't think they've had a 4,000-yard passer the entirety of the time in the Super Bowl era. 56 seasons now, and I don't believe they've had a 4,000-yard passer. So that's a long, long drought, not even a drought, just non-existent in terms of significant productivity at the quarterback position. And in this league, now more than ever, you need great quarterback play to be successful. You need great quarterback play to be in the Super Bowl. You look at Matt Stafford, who's obviously struggled, but he's been amazing this season. In the postseason, he's been amazing. That's why the Rams are in the Super Bowl. And Joe Burrow's played very well in the postseason. He's in the Super Bowl. That's the kind of stuff that Green Bay, the Packers have won the division almost every year the last over a decade with Rodgers. And before that with Favre. Favre is a Hall of Famer. Rodgers is going to be a Hall of Famer. And the Bears have not had those guys. So if they want a guy like that and they want Justin Fields to be that guy, it would behoove them to find someone who's a really proven offensive mind.
Yeah, and I don't think there's much else to be said. I think this could end up being a really good hire if the Bears defense goes back to the form that we saw them a few years ago. Because obviously the last couple of years they've been a little disappointing, but if they can get back to that form, then this will look like a genius hire because they won't need incredible offensive play because their defense will be so dominant. But all right, Randy, if you want to jump on the Broncos hiring since they hired the Packers offensive coordinator and just tell me what you think about that.
Nathaniel Hackett, I think it's a really good hire. I haven't really paid attention to like what opinions have been in the media, but Nathaniel Hackett is a very good offensive coordinator. And obviously Denver wants to bring in Aaron Rodgers. They've had a drought at quarterback play really ever since Peyton Manning's MVP season when he threw 55 touchdown passes. Peyton Manning's play declined after that season, and he was frankly bad the year they won the Super Bowl, but that's not really an indictment on him. He was injured and so on. But they haven't had great quarterback play since Peyton Manning. Before Peyton Manning, they hadn't had great quarterback play really since John Elway. So they're in desperate need of an excellent quarterback. And they've only won one Super Bowl since John Elway left. And that has a lot to do with the lack of quarterback play. Obviously, their win was when they had an amazing defense, but they need to get dominant offensive play. That's the type of league we're in now. And Nathaniel Hackett is definitely the right guy. In 2020 season when the Packers had the number one offense, Rodgers won his MVP. The Green Bay Packers were 80% touchdown percentage or 80% score percentage. I forget which one it was. I believe it was touchdowns though in the red zone, which is a spectacular stat. That is incredible numbers. And obviously the entire offense was spectacular and it was good. It was great again this year. And a lot of that has to do with the game planning of Nathaniel Hackett. Matt LaFleur is the play caller, I believe, but Nathaniel Hackett no doubt has a huge role in that offense. And Green Bay is going to miss him. I think Denver got a great guy.
Yeah, I got it, Connor.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think it's a very solid hiring. Again, I think too much. I think this is a hiring, of course, with Aaron Rodgers in mind. But this Broncos roster is not a bad roster whatsoever. I mean, they were banged up with injury a lot last year, especially on the offensive side. The quarterback position is always a question for the Broncos. It has been since Peyton Manning left. But this offense, Courtland Sutton, who was injured all of last year, is a very, very good wide receiver, very underrated. People are forgetting about him. Jerry Jeudy, again, has drop issues, but he could definitely be a very solid. He's one of the best route runners in the league already. You got KJ Hamler. You have other guys, and the offensive line is a little – Noah Fant's another weapon. The offensive line's okay. The defense last year, even without Von Miller, wasn't bad at all. So this is a very underrated roster, and I feel like with Nathaniel Hackett, the offense will elevate, especially with the wide receiver weapons. It's not like a huge splash, and if they get a quarterback, I think this team could definitely be a sneaky team to make the playoffs next year.
I absolutely agree. And don't forget, Devontae Williams is an excellent running back.
Oh yeah. Oh, he was my running back one last year out of North Carolina. I love Javonte Williams so much.
Yeah.
He's an absolute menace.
Yeah. And, I'm on the same page for the most part. When I first saw hiring, I was questioning it a little bit. But, the more I dug on Nathaniel Hackett and his history, he took a Jacksonville Jaguars team as an offensive coordinator with Blake Bortles at quarterback to the AFC Championship. And I think that speaks numbers that they were able to get that far. And yes, the defense was fantastic, but they were still able to put up productive offensive numbers. And, the big reason for the hiring here is the Aaron Rodgers. There's no other reason that you hire somebody from the Packers organization, in my opinion, unless you have in mind that Rodgers is going to be coming along. And it's seeming more and more likely that he's going to Denver. They've got the cap where they can make the cap room for Devontae Adams as well, which is a big piece for Aaron Rodgers. He wants Adams to come with him. And yeah, so I think it's a good hire. I don't know if it's a great one. It's probably a safe bet. And like you said, Matt, this is a really, really good just team, and it's really overlooked. I think it's overlooked a lot because of the division they're in and how dominant the other teams in the division are. But it's a really good overall roster, and bring in a good quarterback, and they can make a run.
I will say one thing. I'm really happy they went offensive coordinator to the defensive coordinator like Vic Fangio was. I think that's going to help out a lot. I think I could have seen before the coaching hires, they went defensive coordinator, which would have been bad because I feel like this team has a lot of potential. So I'm really happy they went with an offensive guy, no matter who it was.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on to Mike McDaniel. I can't like this hiring because they fired Flores. Flores was such a great coach, and he did such good work for them. And I don't care if they would have brought Bill Belichick in. There was no good hire here. And I think Mike McDaniel, he's got some potential. He could be a really good coach. He's young. We haven't really seen a whole lot. But my big problem here is Kyle Shanahan was calling the offense in San Francisco. So what does Mike McDaniel bring other than his potential and him being young? The only upside I really see is he is a Tua guy. He loves Tua. And if this organization is wanting to stick with Tua, and Tua's the guy, which it seems like the owner is really invested in Tua, then having a coach that's big on him is important. And Brian Flores obviously wasn't as big on Tua, wanting to bring in Deshaun Watson, make moves, build the team for this year. Having a coach that's pro Tua is going to help with the chemistry with ownership and the front office for a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think bringing in an offensive guy is huge. I understand Brian Flores. I don't believe firing him was threatened either. But I think the ownership wanted to make a shift towards a more modern, potentially a more modern offensive approach, or a more modern team approach, I should say, to where they wanted to kind of see if they could develop Tua differently if they had an offensive-minded head coach. Tua has his limitations, but I also think he has a decent amount of potential. We talked about him a couple weeks ago. If they can get the right minds in there, the right coach behind him, I think you could have a similar thing to a Drew Brees. And obviously, Drew Brees is an all-time great, so I'm not saying he's going to be Drew Brees, but I am saying if you get the right offensive mind behind Tua, we could see great things. So I don't mind the hire. I thought it was a solid hire. Like you said, he did not call the plays. Shanahan did. So what involvement did he have in the play calling is the big question, or what involvement did he have in the game plan is a huge question. But I think this has potential to be a really good hire.
Yeah, and obviously Matt's computer disconnected, so he'll be joining us back in a second. But I think the big thing here is, even though he wasn't doing the play calling, even if he was a big part of it, that offense was kind of predictable. I mean, they made a lot of shifts to try to hide that they were doing the same thing, but it was a lot of outside runs. It was a lot of handing it off to Debo, letting him do his thing, a lot of throwing over the middle. It was relatively predictable. And, with a good defensive coordinator on the other side, on the opposite team, I think that team could have been shut down pretty easily. Obviously the Rams would be my example if it wasn't for the fact that they usually can't play the 49ers very well, but they try. But he's young, he's got potential, and I think that's why they hired him here. But I'm not really totally sure it's going to work out, and he could be a one and done. I think that's the situation. Matt, welcome back. What do you think of Mike McDaniel?
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Little internet issues. Mike McDaniel, the hiring, again, like you said, Connor, I can't like it. Brian Flores has elevated this team every single year. He's been with the Dolphins to a place I don't think they've been. I don't think they would be without him. That firing in the first place just made no sense to me. It had to be just personal issues within the team, and I feel like whatever coach they got this year would have been just a downgrade. I think Mike McDaniel next year is just not going to work. I think he has potential, but again, this roster, and remember the first half of the season, this team was just really, really bad. I mean, they were a contention for the first overall pick in the first half of the season. And then again, Tua has potential. I feel like he definitely showed that the last year. How much can Mike McDaniel elevate him and kind of, when Tua has his bad moments, hide him with? And again, Mike McDaniel being an offensive-minded guy, Brian Flores was, I feel like, kind of both. He was very good on the defensive side and elevated the defense to where if you look at the roster, they're not that great, but when you see them play in person, this defense is very, very good. And I can't like it. Especially if they got an okay coach, I would be okay with it. But I mean, they went from a great coach, in my opinion, top 10 coach in the league, to I don't like the hire at all. I just don't.
Yeah, and I find it really interesting that Brian Flores wasn't able to land one of the jobs, and it could be because of the political stuff going on with the lawsuit and all that going on. But honestly, with a coach that good, you take some of the heat. I think somebody needed to have hired him. He's just too good of a coach to not be a head coach on a team going forward. So I hope that next offseason one of those gaps opens and somebody will hire him, noticing that even with what he says, the owner wanting the team to lose, he was still able to get the team to win. And he's one of the first, actually he might be the first successful Bill Belichick understudy, because he was the linebacker coach there. He actually has success, which is a rarity when it comes to coaches that are from that Bill Belichick line. So I guess we'll see on Brian Flores where he ends up going forward. I hope he at least lands a job somewhere doing something this year. All right, so
absolutely.
All right, Matt, talk about Brian DeBall. You said you really like that hiring. Let's hear. Or not.
What happened to Mateo?
I don't know. It's spazzing.
Is he
I think it's disconnecting.
Is he here? Did he disconnect again?
I love the picture it froze on. Well, I don't want to take too much downtime, so Randy, you go ahead and take it.
Now we're gonna talk about the Jags.
Yeah, we'll just talk about the Jags and we'll come back.
All right. So Doug Peterson's an interesting hire for sure. I have mixed feelings about it. Obviously, he won a Super Bowl, and he won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. And in that Super Bowl, they put up 41 points against the Patriots. Bill Belichick is one of the great defensive-minded coaches, and they gave up 41 points, which is really why they lost. So Doug Peterson has there was definitely a lot of upside to him. There was a lot of drama in Philadelphia in the closing years, some power struggles between him and Howie Roseman, and a lot of kind of ambiguous gray area stuff that happened in that organization in Philadelphia. I don't feel like all of it was on Doug Peterson the way it all went down there. So with that being said, I feel like this could work out really well. The more I've thought about the hire, the more I thought this might be a very solid hire. Obviously, offensive guy in Doug Peterson, and correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he's an offensive guy. Yeah, because he's from the Andy Reid coaching tree. And they got a rookie quarterback in Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence that he's developed. So I think this could work out really well.
Yeah, actually, as weird as it is, nobody else has this opinion. This is a rare opinion. This is my favorite hiring out of all of them this year. I really like this hiring. Doug Peterson, Super Bowl winning coach. In his 5 years coaching in Philadelphia, he had 3 playoff appearances. He was in the playoffs 3 of those years. So that's incredible. He also won a Super Bowl as a player back when he was playing. So he's got both sides of that. So that's really good for a coach. And he's got a winning record as a head coach. He was 42, 37, and 1 as a head coach. So that's above 500 as a head coach. And I think that is going to be huge for Jacksonville. And he made it clear in the press conference, it's not about winning now. It's about developing a winning culture and building a winning organization to win in the future. And that is the right answer, especially when you have a roster that's so thin like the Jaguars is right now. So I think if they stick with him, give him a couple years, that Jaguars team, as weird as it is to say, could be absolutely dangerous.
I agree. Yeah, he could. I think if there's a guy that you want to set up to build for the future, I think he's one of the guys you would want in that building. Like you said, Super Bowl winning coach, and he did it with his backup quarterback. He was able to keep his team together despite losing his MVP candidate quarterback. Carson Wentz was having an incredible season. I believe he had 33 touchdowns and 7 picks when he tore his ACL. Without a doubt, the front runner to win MVP at the time. And they were able to stick together. They fought hard. Their defense stepped up big against Atlanta. And then Nick Foles and the Eagles offense caught fire in that NFC Championship. And they just rolled through the NFC Championship and they balled out in the Super Bowl. And I think Doug Peterson has a lot to do with that success. So if he brings that same kind of mentality, if he's able to like create that same culture in Jacksonville, I think Jacksonville can have some real success.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome back again.
All right, I'm filming on my phone now. My computer's just not working. We work through it. We go through it. Talking about Doug Pearson, I like the hire too. I think it's they got a mature guy in there, especially for Trevor Lawrence. I think that's one of the biggest things with a young quarterback. Just getting a guy that knows how to win and has been there and done that, experienced head coach. I disagree with the point that it's the best head coaching hire because I don't think there's not a lot of upside with it. We know what Doug Peterson is, and the team. I hope the team has some patience with him because this team right now it's not a very good roster. Trevor Lawrence is going to have some growing pains. Trevor Lawrence still has, I think, the highest potential in all the draft. So the Doug Pearson hire definitely makes sense to me. And we've seen Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence play style, in my opinion, is a lot like Carson Wentz when he was really young. A lot like Carson Wentz, where the gunslinger mentality, when he rolls out the pocket, even the motion's kind of the same. It's just I think it's just really smart hire by the Jaguars organization.
Yeah, and it's surprising that the Jaguars make a good hire. Some of their hirings in the past have been very questionable, even up front. Like a lot of times when a coach is hired, the organization is excited, the fans are excited, but not with the Jags. They've had some poor decisions with coaching, Doug Marrone being the biggest one. That there were so many question marks around that when they first hired him, and rightfully so, because look where we are. I mean, he did not do a good job as the head coach just over the years that he was there. But Matt, since you're back, we'll transition to the Giants, to Brian DeBall, like we were going to a second ago. So go ahead.
I love the Brian DeBall hire from the Giants. The one thing I'm concerned about is if the Giants organization, I mean, the front office is just really bad. The team right now is bad. So Brian DeBall, I think his first season might look like a bad head coaching hire. Because the team around him's not that good. But I love the hire, especially for Daniel Jones. I feel like this is a big win for Daniel Jones in the offense. If they can beef up this offensive line this year, get some better players on defense. I mean, the wide receiver weapons aren't that bad. Kadarius Toney's a little bit of a head case. I love them out of Florida, though. I think he has a lot of potential. Kenny Galladay, I mean, he's not the same Kenny Galladay we saw in Detroit, but I think there's still definitely something there. Darius Slayton, if he can fix a couple catching problems, he's going to be good. I mean, this offense has potential. This offense definitely has potential. I feel like bringing Brian Dable in sets the potential a lot higher. And Daniel Jones, deep ball last year was really, really good. If he can fix some stuff, I think he can be a very solid quarterback in the league. I don't think he'll ever be top 10, but a very solid quarterback. And I mean, we've seen the Giants win with solid quarterbacks before. Eli Manning being the one that comes to mind, obviously. So I love the hire, though, because I think Brian Dable did such an amazing job at the Bills and Josh Allen. I love the hire.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, the ball huge on the Josh Allen development. He was just excellent play calling. That offense was booming. In 2020, they were the second highest scoring, right behind the Packers, with like nearly 32 points a game. And he won Assistant Coach of the Year in 2020, which I think that's an award that people don't pay enough attention to, because that award pays dividends to the head coaching hires going forward. And obviously he's proving that point right now with him getting hired. And me and Randy talked about on the last podcast. I'm big on Daniel Jones. I think he's got a lot of potential. He could be a good quarterback. He's got just hidden athleticism that people don't give enough credit for. He's actually pretty fast. And I think he gets his decision-making fixed a little bit. Maybe they'd be a little more conservative with the passing, like a West Coast offense, throw it deep every now and then, keep it short, run the ball with Saquon. That offense could be booming. And as long as they get a couple veterans on the defensive side this offseason, I think they could be a dangerous team.
I absolutely agree. And like you said, Daniel Jones, without a doubt, has a lot of talent, and he's very fast. The play that he'll forever be memed for, where he's taken off and he's got a free touchdown, he trips and he falls. I believe he hit 22 miles per hour on that run. So he is far from slow. He's an athlete. He's an underrated athlete for sure. He has a good arm, not a great arm, but he has a good arm. And like you said, did well with the deep ball. If the Giants in the offseason and in the draft can shore up the offensive line, and if Saquon Barkley can have a bounce back year, because I loved Saquon Barkley his rookie year, and then when he got hurt, and then he came back, and it was like kind of this struggle. What is Saquon Barkley? Because his stats were bad. So it was like, oh, well, he was getting hit in the backfield a lot because the offensive line wasn't really blocking. So what's the thing with Saquon? He struggled a lot this year. But I think if Saquon Barkley can kind of bounce back, be rejuvenated, they can revamp the offensive line to make it a more balanced passing attack and not call QB sneaks on your own 5-yard line on 3rd and 9. If you can do those things, I think the Giants in a few years could develop really nicely. I think Brian Dable is without a doubt the guy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that you're not going to be building around Daniel Jones in a sense. Daniel Jones is going to be your quarterback, but you're building this offense and this team around Saquon, hoping that he stays healthy. You don't spend the second overall pick in a draft a few years ago on a running back if he's not going to be the main piece of your offense. And a lot of people don't think that they should have gone Saquon, even though he's had success, which that's a topic for another time. But I think this offense is going to be built around Saquon and Brian DeBall, who was able to take some running backs in Buffalo who really aren't that great of running backs, if we're being honest, but he was able to have success on the ground, especially this year. So I love the hiring. This is my second favorite, right behind Doug Peterson. I just think the Doug Peterson hiring is great, but pretty much the unanimous best hiring is Brian DeBall.
Yeah, it's my favorite hire. It's my favorite hire for sure.
We'll go up to my favorite hiring of the head coaching thing, but
all right. So Josh McDaniels, obviously, I'm a Raiders fan, so I've got some strong opinions on this. This might be surprising. I love this hiring. I think it's a really good hire. I think we needed an offensive-minded, really good play caller as our coach, and I think Josh McDaniels is that guy. We needed a coach that had full confidence in Derek Carr, and through the interview process and the press conferences and stuff, he has been huge on Derek Carr. And I have mixed opinions on Derek Carr. I think he makes a lot of mistakes that he shouldn't, makes some throws that he shouldn't, but overall Derek Carr is a good quarterback. I think he's a top 10 guy. And if you have a coach that has full confidence in him, Gruden did not have full confidence in Derek Carr. So if you've got a coach that has full confidence and lets Derek Carr take the reins, then I think you've got a really dangerous Raiders offense. And as long as you can build the defense really well, and they had a really good defensive coordinator hiring. They stole the Giants defensive coordinator, who's an absolutely underrated defensive coordinator. Only reason Giants really won games this past year was because of their defense. I think you build that team, you draft some good defensive players, get maybe one big time weapon on the offensive side in the draft, like a Jameson Williams or a Garrett Wilson, someone like that. Then you've got a really dangerous offense and at least a solid defense. That this past year, two of the top 5 leaders in pass rushing and quarterback pressures were on the Raiders, and Ngakoue and Crosby. So you've got really good pieces to build around on the defense. And this is going to be a big year for the Raiders as an organization. If with Josh McDaniels, we have success and are able to make it work, then this could be the turning point for the Raiders going forward.
I'm going to disagree with you a little on this one. I know you're a Raiders fan, so I don't want to offend you too much. I don't really like the hire. I think Josh McDaniels, again, from the Patriots coaching little branch, Brian Flores is the only one we've really seen with success. I think Josh McDaniels is again, for the Raiders, another really, really safe head coaching option. I think with this offense and the potential that it has with Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, an okay offensive line, some speed at the wide receiver position, I think you needed a guy that would elevate them to like their full potential and take some risk. Josh McDaniels is, again, I feel like you're going to have a lot of situations where I watched a lot of Raiders game because I have a friend that's a Raiders fan as well. So I follow them a lot. And I saw a lot of opportunities where they could have just took a deep shot, but on, like, let's say on a 2nd and 3, they run the ball right up the middle. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I really wanted a guy that maybe throw a little play action there, maybe take another deep shot on 2nd and 3, which the Raiders, I think, are going to be a solid team again, like they always are. But are they going to be that Super Bowl contender? Which is that's what I think they need to do with this head coaching hire. I don't think they did that. I think they're going to be a solid team again. I think just Josh McDaniels is an upgrade from John Gruden, but I don't think they're ever going to reach their full potential with Josh McDaniels.
I see what you're saying, and you can point to his lack of success in Denver, but what he didn't have in Denver was he didn't have dominant quarterback play. Derek Carr is someone who is absolutely capable of performing at an extremely high level. We saw it a lot this season. I believe he was top 5 in passing yards. He played really, really good football this year. I thought he was very underrated. Like Connor said, I think he's a top 10 guy. And Josh McDaniels is someone who's had a tremendous success with Tom Brady. And I thought his play calling with rookie Mac Jones was really good. I thought he really elevated Mac Jones' quarterback play this year with the play calling. So I think this is a hire that could really work well.
All right. Well, Matt, you go ahead and start on Dennis Allen. I will be right back. But you guys go ahead and start talking about that one.
If you see 2 Mateo Bonnies in the Zoom, that's just like my backup option. I'm on my computer again. The Dennis Allen hiring, I think is probably one of the worst ones of the head coaching hiring. It's just another safe option. They stick within their organization, and I feel like they definitely have better options. I think this is a head coaching hire that's actually being underrated a little bit. I think he's going to be okay, but you got a big time playmaker, maybe make a lot of mistakes in Jameis Winston, and this offense who has a lot of big time potential. You just stay a little safe again. I just don't know how I feel about it. And the defense last year, I mean, wasn't the best. And coming from the defensive coordinator, I don't really know how I like it.
I mean, the Dennis Allen-led defense for the Saints I don't know where you got not the best. I mean, I get it wasn't a great defense, but it had excellent moments. Like Dennis Allen put together spectacular game plans to shut down some of the best quarterbacks in the league. And really the two best quarterbacks in the league this year had their worst games against his Saints. With Rodgers throwing 2 picks and no touchdowns and getting blown out early in the year in week 1, and then Tom Brady getting shut out against the Saints. I know Tom Brady has struggled, but I think that speaks volumes to Dennis Allen. Tom Brady has struggled greatly against the Saints, and the only time he was really productive offensively was when the Saints started turning the ball over in the NFC divisional round last year. So then they were able to get some points on the board. And I think this could be a really good hire because a defensive coordinator of that caliber, to where this is a defense that has performed at an extremely high level when they've needed to lose that defense coordinator could mean kind of a faltering of the defense. And when you've lost so many offensive guys, Michael Thomas, who knows when he's going to be able to play again. I mean, he hasn't played hardly at all in 2 years. Drew Brees gone, obviously. Jameis Winston, who knows if he's going to come back to New Orleans. That's a topic for another day. I think he will, though. And the stuff with Alvin Kamara now, which obviously that didn't go into the hire because he was hired well before that stuff happened. But I think that this is a well-timed hire considering the losses they've had as an organization and as a team. I think he'll be able to keep that defense together, and I think he'll be able to keep the team together better than most people will be able to. Because right now, New Orleans is in a rough spot with their cap space and some of the struggles they have offensively.
Yeah, this is actually my least favorite hiring. And there's 2 reasons it's my least favorite hire. One, the other options they had, the other people they interviewed, he was not the best option out of those guys. I mean, Brian Flores was available still. Eric Bieniemy interviewed with them. Like, you've got some really good coaches that they had options for, and they just decided to go in-house, which I'm never a fan of teams going in-house on coaches. If you didn't have success as a unit and you fire the head coach, then you just bring someone else in that was part of that. If you're changing head coaches, you need a complete change of scenery. You are resetting. That's what most of these teams are doing. They're building new units in the coaching staff. And I think that's something that teams need to do if you're firing a head coach. If you're firing a head coach, something's wrong. And if you're sticking with what was there before, then you're not doing the full reset that you're supposed to. And the second reason, he was 8-28 as a coach when he coached the Raiders. That's a significantly bad number. And I believe 6 of those wins were at the beginning of his first year. So really 2-28 following those 6 games, that is an ugly number. And I get that the Raiders weren't a very good team and didn't have much talent at that time. But at the end of the day, 8 wins as a coach, that's an ugly number. So I think you've got to look at his past history and evaluate whether that was his fault or the team's fault. And I think it goes both ways. And just with the other options, I just don't see why they would do it.
Well, my issue though is they didn't fire Sean Payton. Sean Payton stepped down, and this is a team that almost made the playoffs, largely in part due to their defense, despite offensive struggles, losing Jameis Winston and then Taysom Hill, who's not a quarterback, and Ian Book, who's we saw him play. That was a rough game versus Miami. So it's not like oh, the defense has been the problem this year. The problem was that when Jameis Winston went down, the Saints offense evaporated into thin air. And really hasn't been the same. And then when Trevor Siemian was he injured or did he get benched?
He got hurt.
He got hurt. That's what I thought. So then when Trevor Siemian got injured, it was even worse. I mean, we saw Ryan Tannehill threw what? Didn't Ryan Tannehill throw 4 picks versus the Saints? It was at least 3. I believe it was 4 picks. And the Titans still somehow won. And if you're taking the ball away 4 times, the loss is not on the defense. So I don't know that you can pin. I know you're talking about the Raiders. So I'm not saying you're pinning the losses this year on Dennis Allen, But I'd just like to double down and say Dennis Allen, these losses are not on him and his defensive unit. They've done an excellent job, I think, and they're the reason that the Saints were in contention to make the playoffs this year, despite having so many injuries. No Michael Thomas, no dominant wide receiver one play. You lose your quarterback. It was a really, really rough year for New Orleans, and the fact that they were in contention is a testament to Sean Payton, who stepped down, obviously a great coach, and the defensive play coached by Dennis Allen. So I'm not saying this is necessarily a great hire, but I am saying I think he deserves a chance.
One more point of mine is if you take a look at the division for the NFC South, there's not any running quarterbacks. I mean, Sam Darnold for a little bit, but he's not really a running quarterback. And the one time they faced Jalen Hurts, they got 40 bombed by the Eagles. So his ability to adjust and stuff, I really don't like the hire. I think he's been in that division a long time. Tom Brady's never been good. I think there's a lot of excuses you can make for him. I just think staying in house, like he said, it might be. I think this could be a little bridge head coaching hire for the Saints. Maybe they hire Dennis Allen, stay safe for this season, and then go out next season and get another head coach. That's another thing I could see happening. But right now, I just think I don't like the hire whatsoever.
Yeah, the only way that this hire makes sense to me is with them having in mind that maybe Sean McVay comes back. And I think that's a mistake. I think if McVay's heart's not in the game and he was leaving now, I think you need to move on.
All right.
I see. The thing is, I get what you're saying because the time is now in the NFC South. What really is there in the NFC South? Tom Brady's retiring, and I think the Buccaneers roster is going to kind of split up. They don't have a quarterback now. Then you got the Panthers, which after their 3-0 start just fell to pieces. They had 2 wins and the rest of the season after going 3-0. They went 2-12, I think. Yeah, 2-12. And then the Falcons, who actually were somehow in playoff contention until the last, month of the season. They were fighting to stay in though, in the hunt. So the Falcons are not a great team either. So the time is now. The New Orleans can take back this division because Tom Brady retired earlier than most people expected him to. So I totally get what you're saying about now's not the time to be safe and go for someone. And Mattel, what you said might actually be a pretty good plan if Dennis Allen doesn't show that he's really the guy this year.
All right. I think it's time to move on. Randy, you can start on Lovie Smith.
Lovie Smith. So it's an interesting hire, and I don't know that it's an amazing hire. And it could be another bridge head coach hire to where they move on if they don't see something great. Because honestly, there's not a lot there in Houston right now. I mean, that roster, you've got a young quarterback who showed potential. Davis Mills had really good stats when he played, and he's one of the few quarterbacks, really one of the only rookie quarterbacks I've seen to have success against Bill Belichick. I mean, Davis Mills played the best game I've ever seen a rookie play against Bill Belichick's defense. He was competitive. Pretty sure New England won that game, but it was competitive. Davis Mills kept him in it. I think he threw 3 touchdown passes. I know he threw 3 touchdown passes. It was a 3 touchdown pass game. He played really well in that game, considering it was against the coach who eats rookies alive. And he showed potential throughout his rookie season whenever he played when Tyler Taylor went down, and Tyler Taylor came back, and then he got benched, and Davis Mills was in again. So you've got some upside there, and then you got some good receivers. Not Cooper Kupp. Brandon Cooks has shot a lot of potential at the receiver. He's been in the league a lot, but he's obviously a really talented guy. He's got good speed. He can take the top off the defense, and he had a productive year this year, especially early in the year. So there's some stuff in Houston, but there's not a lot. There's not a lot to work with in Houston. So I don't know what their expectations are for Lovie Smith this year. Houston's not going to have a lot of wins this year. It's going to be very similar to this year. I mean, going to be very similar to the past season they just had. I don't see where this works out well for Lovie Smith. And that's not necessarily an indictment on Lovie Smith. He went to a Super Bowl with Chicago. He's had success. But I just don't see how this works out.
Yeah, and I'm confused on this hiring because so the Texans defense was ranked 27th this past year. And Lovie Smith was the defensive coordinator. I get that they didn't have a lot of talent, but how are you going to fire a coach that the players of the team love and David Culley, that those players played their heart out for him? That team with the talent they had shouldn't have won a single game this year. And that's just the reality. And they were able to win games. I think they won 4.
That's right. I think 4, maybe 5.
Yeah. And you've got a defensive coordinator who, yes, he's had success in the past. I believe he's 89 and 87 as a head coach previously, so just above 500. But I don't understand. This is the same thing I was saying with Dennis Allen. I don't get, if you see a problem with the head coach, why you would stay in-house. That's the people that are on the staff are the staff that was hired by Culley. So what is the thought process of getting rid of the head coach and still keeping the same, like the rest of that staff? Retaining the staff is illogical if you're getting rid of the head coach. The head coach should have the guys that he wants, the guys that he thinks are going to build the most successful staff to get the best out of their team. And if you're not giving him that option and you're just staying in-house and keeping everybody else, then it doesn't make any sense. And they haven't hired a defensive coordinator yet. They're still sitting on that. And I'm not sure that they're going to be honest. I think Lovie Smith is still wanting to call that defense. So you might have like an assistant defensive coordinator, something like that, but I don't think they'll hire an actual DC. But there has been no movement within the organization on other staff other than Lovie Smith moving to head coach. And it doesn't make any sense to me.
The one thing I'll say about this hiring is I think it's being like you guys are saying what it's not. I think their guy was either hired or was Brian Flores, and they didn't hire because of the stuff going on with him. I think this is a bridge head coaching hire. I feel like their guy was either Brian Dable or a guy that got hired, maybe Kevin O'Connell. And when he got hired to another team where Brian Flores just stuff going on, they just had to hire somebody that maybe a 1-year type of guy. But I think David Culley was never the guy for me. I think he was my least favorite head coach hire last year. I think he did a better job than I was expecting, and I think most people were expecting. But he was never the guy, and I think the reason they fired him is because they thought they were going to get a Flores or somebody like that. I mean, the Texans aren't going to be very good this year, no matter who their head coaching is or who their head coach is. So, again, I think this is just kind of like a wish-wash hire, and like it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's a great point. Is that their guy was probably Brian Flores. They interviewed Brian Flores once at least, and I think they tried to interview him a second time if they didn't interview him a second time. And it's really difficult to hire someone when that guy is suing your company, regardless of what the cause is and whether it's just or whether it's not just, isn't what I'm talking about. But when someone's suing your company, it's very difficult to then, as a branch of that company, hire them to a position of leadership. So it really put Houston in a tough spot. And I just don't think you can hire someone that's suing your company. So that's why they didn't hire Brian Flores, I think. And that's why they ultimately went with Lovie Smith. And it's no disrespect to Lovie Smith, who he's had success in the league, went to a Super Bowl, like I said. But like Mateo said, I don't see the Texans having success with him. I just don't see how the Texans will win games. I think this is another bridge head coaching job.
All right. Well, we'll move on to the Vikings, and then we'll jump into those AFC North quarterbacks. We have spent a lot of time on these coaches, so we'll try to keep that topic a little bit slimmer. But the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, I want to say this. When I first heard that that's who they were going after, which obviously it's not official, obviously, because he's still coaching in the Super Bowl this year, which will be tomorrow, but that's their guy. When I first was looking into it, I loved the hire. I thought it was a really good hiring. He's a young coach, a lot of potential. I think it was a very good, especially with a new GM, very good move. But the more I dug, the more I didn't like it, actually. Because so McVay he's the play caller for the Rams. So it's the same with McDaniel. We don't know how much of an impact he has on the play calling there. And he has a complete lack of experience. He's had 4 jobs in the NFL. And if you go to Wikipedia, they've got 1 sentence for each job because he didn't do anything of note anywhere. And the other coaches that he played under were Chip Kelly and Jay Gruden. Those are not great role models for being a head coach. Now, McVay, obviously a fantastic coach, but with the other people that he's played under, that's not a good look. And with the other options that they had, I mean, they had Raheem Morris, who is the defensive coordinator. They had Todd Bowles. They had Dan Quinn. They had Jim Harbaugh. I think that this is just a questionable hire, especially with those guys that they could have potentially had.
I'm going to disagree with you. This is my favorite head coaching hire. I think what we don't know from Kevin O'Connell, I think just going up from the Sean McVay system, and with Matthew Stafford and a good offense, I think it correlates so well to what the Vikings are trying to do. And the Vikings have Dalvin Cook. And this head coaching hire makes a lot of sense for me. All right, the Vikings have had Mike Zimmer for a long time now, a defensive-minded guy. And with the league developing and their team, I mean, the strength right now for the Vikings, if we're being honest, is definitely their offense. Their defense was to like 2015. Now it's their offense with Kirk Cousins, Jay Jettis, and Adam Thielen. This team needs a guy that has superstar potential. I think that's what Kevin O'Connell brings. And I think Matthew Stafford, I think Kirk Cousins and Matthew Stafford, I don't think they play the same at all for what Matthew Stafford is doing for the Rams or what Kirk Cousins asked him to do for the Vikings. But I think he can bring a lot of what Matthew Stafford was doing with the deep ball and with the wide receiver weapons in Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson, OBJ to the Vikings. And that's what I love about this. I think like the weapons and the quarterback, it just correlates so well.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to use some of the previous coaches he's coached under. You said Jay Gruden and what was the other one?
Chip Kelly.
Chip Kelly. I don't think it's fair to use those guys, him coaching under them, as an indictment on him as a coach, because that doesn't really necessarily mean that he's using their styles. If he saw what they failed, it's very possible, very plausible that he would change his style or change some of his philosophies contrary to theirs for the sake of having success. And now coaching under Sean McVay for this season. I don't know how long he's been in LA. But Sean McVay, like you said, is an excellent role model, and he's a great guy to learn from as a coach. So I think that this is a great hire for Minnesota. Minnesota, they can increase their offensive firepower. They've already got amazing weapons. Kirk Cousins is a very solid quarterback. I think he's an overhated quarterback. Justin Jefferson is obviously a spectacular wide receiver. Adam Thielen's a very good wide receiver. Dalvin Cook's an excellent running back when he's healthy. If they can shore up that offensive line more, and I think this could be an excellent hire. I think that if there's a guy that has the potential to take this Vikings offense to the next level, I think that's Kevin O'Connell.
They did say that in the interview process that O'Connell was the only one that saw Kirk Cousins as the focal point of their offense and as the quarterback going forward. And I think the ownership in Minnesota was looking for a coach that was happy with Kirk, wanting Kirk to move forward. And most of the other candidates thought of him as a bridge quarterback, got a couple more years till we find our franchise guy. And I think they wanted Kirk to be the guy. And Kirk, like you said, Randy, he is a fantastic, underrated quarterback. He does the job. He does a good job. And yes, he's got really good receivers. So it's a little questionable how much of that is him, but it doesn't matter how much of that is him because he has those receivers now. And as long as he's in Minnesota, he's going to have some success. And, you know, I listed off a lot of defensive coaches as their other options. And Matt, you said that you think it's good that they went offensive. I disagree. I think bringing in a good new fresh offensive coordinator and have a defensive minded coach with a weaker defense was more important especially when you have proven coaches like Jim Harbaugh or Todd Bowles or Raheem Morris. He stepped up in Atlanta as their interim coach, and he did a sufficient job while he was there. And Dan Quinn, I mean, he took his team to the Super Bowl. You know, we won't talk about what happened in that Super Bowl. And he was also a great defensive coordinator for the Cowboys this year, and he won the Assistant Coach of the Year award. So I don't understand not going for someone more proven, or it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I get the potential, I get the upside. It's just not my favorite hiring. I think I could be proven very wrong, and I hope I am. I think the Vikings have a lot of potential and a lot of young players that I'd like to see have some success. But at the end of the day, with their other options, that's my big thing with a lot of these hires. If I don't like the hiring because of their other options or because of who they fired, it doesn't make sense based on who they got rid of or who they could have gotten.
We spent too much time on the head coaches, but I'll make one last point. I feel like the play action game when Stefanski left wasn't as good when Stefanski was there when they made the playoffs. And I think the Rams this year, when they've ran play action, they've been very, very effective. Matthew Stafford's going to have one of those throws every game, but I feel like that's a very underrated part of this team. Kirk Cousins is one of the best play action throwers in the entire NFL. I mean, just look at the stats. And even if you watch the Vikings, that was one of their big parts in the Browns now with Kevin Stefanski. So that's another thing. But we got to move on.
All right, yeah, we'll move on to the quarterbacks. I would like to restructure what I said earlier, and I have a lot of stats for each of these quarterbacks. So I'm going to start by reading the stats that I have written, and then we can start talking about the quarterback. This one, we shouldn't have to spend too much time on. Joe Burrow, 2 seasons, 26 starts, 68% completion rate, 280 yards a game, nearly 2 touchdowns per game, obviously less than an interception, 0.7 interceptions a game, 5-0 in the playoffs, not much of a runner, so we don't have to talk about his rushing stats. But I mean, Joe Burrow, just excellent quarterback. And he is, in my opinion, the biggest reason that Bengals organization has turned around.
I completely agree with that. Of course, me, a Browns fan, being an AFC guy, I watched him a lot. I feel like throughout his rookie season, he was very underrated. I mean, Justin Herbert, of course, when the rookie campaign was going on, was getting most of the hype, and fair enough so. But I think Joe Burrow last season was really, really, really underrated. I mean, the deep ball was not working, but they didn't really have a deep ball wide receiver. His accuracy was good. He showed a lot of potential. I think he put it all together this year. Zach Taylor and him have a good connection. Even if I don't like Zach Taylor that much, they have a connection. We can't argue that. I love the Jamar Chase pick when it happened. I still do. I think it was the right pick, even though the offensive line is that bad. I mean, the connection is just there. We knew in college. We know it now. He's just a great quarterback. I think the scary thing is, me as a Browns fan, is there's so much more. He could be so much better. And that's great for the Bengals organization. I feel great for them because it's the best quarterback they've had since – I'm saying right now he's better than Carson Palmer, but since Boomer Esiason. I feel like he's the best quarterback they had since Boomer Esiason. I think he'll definitely be better than Boomer Esiason. So he's just a great quarterback, but there's no questions about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Joe Burrow. I'm a huge fan of Joe Burrow. And it's more than just the stats and the productivity. It's that swagger and it's that it factor that he has that you don't see from a lot of players. Yeah, he's got that kind of that coolness about him. It's like why people call him Joe Cool. Obviously, Joe Montana is the original holder of that nickname. And it really has a lot to do with just how calm he is under pressure. He does not get rattled. And the other thing is the argument against him is the picks he's thrown. But most of those picks he threw were early in the season. And early in the season was still like his rookie year because he got injured last year and only played about half the season. He still had probably a lot of growing pains to go through earlier in the year. He's still adjusting to the NFL. And we've seen in the last 2 months of this season, including the postseason and then the end of the regular season, in the last 2 months of football played, he's been, without a doubt, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the NFL. And it's been because he really is cut out from turnovers. He does not throw the stupid picks that he threw earlier in the year. He's been even more calculated with the ball, even more explosive offensively. They've really meshed and put together the whole thing. And joining him with Jamar Chase, like you said, Mateo, is absolutely huge. I don't think they're here right now in the position they are without Jamar Chase. And the connection they have together has been absolutely spectacular. Joe Burrow, in my opinion, is and will continue to be the best quarterback in the AFC North as long as he continues to play at this level, which I think he'll be able to do for 10 plus years.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys heard in a interview with Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer had made a point that it's going to be really interesting to see this offseason, especially if the Bengals are looking to continue to build on this Super Bowl caliber team. And if they aren't, what does that mean for Joe in the near future? And I think that's a valid point. I think Joe Burrow, he can love being in Cincy can love him. But at the end of the day, if they show this offseason that they're not looking to win every year and they're not going to continue to fight for what they have, give him an offensive line, things like that, then we could see him walk. We could see him try to go elsewhere after his rookie contract has ended. But
I'll make a last point on Joe Burrow. I feel like one of the most underrated things about a quarterback, it's not a stat, but it's one thing you see. A guy like Tom Brady is the perfect example for this, is the ability to win. And he's shown that throughout his career. He has the ability to win and get the job done no matter what it takes. And sometimes you can make the excuse like Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert's a better quarterback than him. Joe Burrow has that ability to win. That's why they're in the Super Bowl right now.
All right, we'll
Absolutely.
move on to my boy Lamar Jackson. I love Lamar Jackson. I'm a big Lamar Jackson guy. 4 seasons, 49 starts, 64.1% completion rate, only 171.8 yards per game through the air, 1.7 touchdowns per game, and 0.6 interceptions per game. But the big thing is 75 rushing yards a game and half a rushing touchdown per game, which is a weird stat. But his big thing that I think is a lot of people's problem is 37 career fumbles. So that is quite a bit of fumbles, but you got to keep in mind, a lot of his production is on the ground and moving. And he's not the guy who's just going to slide. He's going to keep fighting and he's going to keep pushing through. 1-3 playoff record. I don't think that speaks much to him, if I'm being honest. I think that's a lot of the team around him has just been okay. Mark Andrews, phenomenal tight end. Marquise Brown is one of those hit or miss guys. He's either going to be Hollywood Brown, like his nickname, or he's going to be Deontay Johnson last year with all the drops. So they need to give him more pieces, in my opinion. I think he is a franchise guy, and he's asking $40 million a year. I think pay the man, absolutely pay the man. When you have other elusive mobile quarterbacks that are getting contracts that big, you make sure you can hone him in, and all he needs is a elite wide receiver. And I think he's no doubt a top 5 quarterback in the league once he gets that.
I'm a Browns fan. I could not hate the Ravens more. Lamar Jackson is probably, in my opinion, the most underrated quarterback and underappreciated quarterback in the entire NFL. The things he does out, like his throwing, if you watch the beginning of the year, his throwing has improved vastly. And I mean, the offensive line this year is probably one of the most overrated offensive lines in the entire NFL. They were banged up all year. The tackles weren't very good. Losing Orlando Brown Jr. was bad. I mean, there's just the injuries to the defense. I mean, I don't know how people aren't talking about that. The injuries to the DBs this season and the defensive line was just, it's incredible how they even were in the playoff race. And most of that was due to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is like, I don't know how to describe him. He's the most electrifying player when he's healthy in football. He does things that no other quarterback in the entire NFL history has ever done. And I don't understand. I've had an argument with the person on this podcast about Lamar Jackson actually many times, aka Randall James Wainwright III. Lamar, his throwing becomes better because of his running. His running is so good that wide receivers become more open. I feel like if you threw let's say you threw Kirk Cousins on this Ravens team, I think the wide receivers would be worse because they could game plan for Kirk Cousins throwing more. The wide receivers look so much better than they are. Marquise Brown is a hit or miss, like you said. Rashad Bateman was injured all year, but when Rashad Bateman was in, he was okay. He's a rookie, so you can't really expect that much from him. I mean, this team just has – Lamar Jackson is the only reason, in my opinion, the sole reason that this team was even relevant this season. I would argue, even though I hate the Ravens more than anything, except for the Steelers, I would argue for Lamar Jackson always. I agree, pay him whatever he's asking, because without him, I feel like this team goes back to a 6-win team. I truly believe that. I think this team is very overrated other than Lamar Jackson. I think their head coach has done a really good job, especially with J.K. Dobbins being out this year with the offense. But other than that, I think this team is very overrated except for Lamar Jackson.
No doubt about it. As much as I have been critical about Lamar Jackson, his limitations are glaring and obvious, but this team is built around him. This team is him. Like, he is the heart and soul of this football team. And he means more to this football team than any other player on the roster. Really, he's more important to that team than anyone else in the organization. I mean, he is Baltimore Ravens football right now. So as much as I've been kind of critical of some of his limitations as a quarterback, when he's healthy, he is, like you said, the most electrifying quarterback in football. And I think if you were to ask me to rank him among the quarterbacks, I'd probably rank him the lowest of the three of us here. But that doesn't, and part of that is because you brought up his lack of a wide receiver one. He does not have someone who can win dominantly, consistently one-on-one coverage. And what that's allowed teams to do, especially this year, and the reason he struggled so much this year in part, is they're able to line up in zero coverage a lot and just say, hey, your receivers aren't going to beat us. And we're going to blitz you. We're going to get after you. We're going to contain you in the pocket, and we're going to put pressure on you. And you're going to have to throw the football to your receivers in order to beat us. And his receivers, a lot of the times, just could not get open. And there's no doubt about it that he struggles when you force him to throw the football. But I think those struggles are eased drastically if you give him someone like who Kyler Murray has in DeAndre Hopkins. And we saw Kyler Murray's play decline drastically when DeAndre Hopkins went out. I mean, Kyler Murray needs DeAndre Hopkins for success. And I think you see the same thing in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, who's a better athlete than Kyler Murray and has been able to make more with less than Kyler Murray overall, considering that he hasn't had that not just superstar, but historically great receiver that DeAndre Hopkins is. If they can get him a superstar wide receiver, if the Green Bay Packers can't hold on to Devontae Adams, you'd expect Baltimore to try and heavily pursue him. I don't think Devontae will go there, but Baltimore would have to at least try. Baltimore should have at least tried for Julio Jones in the offseason. They need to try for an elite level talent wide receiver for us to truly know how good and how effective can Lamar Jackson be. Because I don't think there's any way to really effectively judge Lamar Jackson until you give him the proper talent on the outside.
Yeah, and I think a big name to watch for Baltimore this offseason is going to be Chris Godwin. I think he's going to be a big name involved there because I don't think he'll stay in Tampa now that Brady's retired. I think he'll look to move on, get a big contract. And the Ravens, like Matt said, they have a lot of holes overall on the team, but you give someone like Chris Godwin to Lamar Jackson, that offense is going to be booming, and the defensive holes and gaps aren't going to feel as big because that offense is going to be so electric. And, I think, like I said, Lamar Jackson is certainly a top 10 quarterback. And I think if you give him someone like Chris Godwin, or like you said, Devontae Adams, or even a guy like Juju, who's going to be a free agent, then you're looking at a top 5 quarterback in the league just because of his ability to be on the ground. And if you give him one of those receivers that can, it's really good in those one-on-ones that he can throw it up when it's necessary, then not only do you have a dangerous quarterback in Lamar Jackson, but you've just got a dangerous team because it's just too electric to stop.
Absolutely. And the one issue is because of his play style, we've seen historically quarterbacks with his play style don't last incredibly long. So it's not an indictment on him now, but I struggle to want to give him a long-term deal given that he needs the running game so much. He needs his legs, and biggest of all, he doesn't slide. If he slid more, I would be all in on a long-term contract. But the fact that he does not slide puts him in danger of injuries more. And when he's injured, can't play. It's like they say, the best ability is availability. And when quarterbacks get used like running backs, like they did with Cam Newton, like they did with RG3, and their bodies start to break down, maybe they lose a step or maybe they just can't play because of injuries, that becomes concerning. Can we really pay this guy this much money if he's not even out on the field for us? So that is really my biggest issue, because we have seen him improve in the passing game outside of the game against the Browns. That was a horrific game. His first game against the Browns was really, really bad. One of the worst games I've seen in terms of quarterback play all around. Baker Mayfield played poorly. Lamar Jackson played poorly. And part of that we can go back to lack of receivers' ability to get open outside of Mark Andrews, who we brought up early on in the discussion. Mark Andrews is a spectacular tight end, and I think he's the best tight end in the league this year. He was truly incredible what he was able to do this year. And he's really the only reason that Lamar Jackson was able to have some success in the passing game, because he was the only one consistently getting open and consistently making great catches in traffic.
I think that is
we're gonna pass by the point. We're gonna pretend like you didn't say Mark Andrews was the best tight end in football this year.
Facts.
We'll run by that. Every other point you made was good. That was just, we're gonna pretend like you didn't say that.
This year, I didn't say he's the best quarterback. I didn't say he's the best tight end all around. I'm saying this year, I think he had the best season.
It's just not true, Connor.
You're pretending Travis Kelce doesn't exist.
Travis Kelce's a close second.
It's not. But that's the thing. He's just not. He's first by a mile.
Yeah,
it's just not. I think he definitely just forgot about him and he tried to defend him.
Mark Andrews had a tremendous year, but let's not pretend that's one of the biggest problems with people that are so good, is that the expectations are so high that you forget how good they are. And Travis Kelce is that guy.
Fine. Can we agree on top two?
I don't know. I have to do my own research. Let's just move on to the Mark Andrews best tight end in the league talk conversation.
We'll forget that later down the road, maybe.
Well, let's go ahead and move to Mason Rudolph and the Steelers. Now, there's not a whole lot to talk about with him. It's more a conversation of what they need to do, but I'll list some of his stats because I think they're really funny. 61.5% career completion rate, which is the lowest out of all the quarterbacks, obviously, in this division. 139 yards per game and 1.6 touchdowns per game, 1.1 interceptions per game, which is pretty wild if you think about it, for you to average an interception a game. And obviously he hasn't started in the playoffs, and I'm not sure that he's won a game with the Steelers, maybe one. But
he's definitely won games.
Obviously not the guy.
The Steelers went 8-8 the year Big Ben tore his elbow in week 2, and Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges played pretty much like equal amount of games.
The only thing I gotta say about it is when you're known, your best memory for you as a quarterback is getting hit in the helmet by another player. You're not really the guy. The only question I have for this quarterback situation is, how is Mike Tomlin going to do it again and lead this team to not have a losing record? He's done it every single year he's been head coach. I don't know how, but he's done it somehow every single year. And you can't bet against him. Just like Tom Brady, you can never bet against him. So it's gonna be me as a Browns fan. I love it. I love to see Ben gone, but it's definitely gonna be interesting to see what the front office does. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually stick with Mason Rudolph, or even a guy like Dwayne Haskins this year, and then go get their guy next year in the draft. So, but we don't really know.
I think they draft a quarterback this year. I don't think they signed a veteran. I agree. I think Mason Rudolph or Dwayne Haskins is the week 1 starter for sure. There's no quarterback in this draft that you're going to draft and throw into a game week 1. If a team does that, they are stupid. That period. That would be a mistake. A lot of these quarterbacks have a lot of potential in this draft, but none of them are ready to start right now. Not a single one of them would I throw into a game right now. So you have a Mason Rudolph or a Dwayne Haskins that maybe they get off to a rough start, and maybe you do like a Joe Flacco, Lamar Jackson situation where you start Mason Rudolph or Dwayne Haskins for the first half of the year, and then once you're comfortable that your rookie has gotten his feet wet, then you go ahead and throw him in and give him a shot. And I obviously, all the things surrounding Malik Willis, I think they're going to end up drafting him, because they, at the Senior Bowl, they were horrible about hiding how much they love him. They were all over him. The scouts just had their eyes locked on him the entire game and the entire week at practices. So I think it's really interesting. Malik Willis, obviously a topic for another day. I love Malik Willis. And I think he did it really well.
We'll get to our draft prospect stuff later, but he right now is also my QB1. So
Yeah, it's Mason Rudolph is without a doubt the worst quarterback in the division. If they do stick with him or Dwayne Haskins, we haven't seen as much from Dwayne Haskins. He played in Washington. I don't think he's the guy either. I don't think Pittsburgh believes in him. If I were Pittsburgh, I would probably pursue heavily a free agent quarterback this year. If you can't get a great quarterback, a Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, if Deshaun Watson clears his name, then Deshaun Watson. I don't know the situation on that, how that's going to unfold. But if he's able to kind of clear his name, then pursue him. If you can't get one of those guys of that caliber, then you almost want to just focus on the draft, fill some other holes in the team, go offensive line. They absolutely have to fill in offensive line holes in free agency and in the draft. And they need to improve their run defense. So those are the three big things: is run defense, offensive line, and quarterback. To me, are the three big things. And if you can't get a high caliber proven guy in free agency, then I think you you pursue the other two holes.
Yeah, and I would say Jimmy G is also in the conversation, but to be honest,
Yep.
I think Jimmy G is heading to Tampa Bay. I think it would make sense for him to end up landing there. And I don't think he's the long-term guy for Tampa Bay, but he's certainly a guy that they're asking a second round pick or a third round pick and a player. As Tampa Bay, you've got room to move a third round pick and a player to get Jimmy G, who's got a lot of potential, and you still got a pretty good roster in Tampa Bay. But as far as the Steelers go, I think you're trying to lure Aaron Rodgers in. I don't think you will, because they don't have the cap room to bring Adams as well. And I don't think they'll be able to clear it. And at the end of the day, there's not Russell Wilson is going to stay put. He wants to stay in Seattle. And they're going to be going in the draft. And like you said, Matt, Malik Willis, number one QB in the draft. I 100% agree. I think he especially proved it in the Senior Bowl. I think Kenny Pickett had a really quiet Senior Bowl performance. I think he was 6 for 6, 80 something yards and a touchdown. That's exactly what you want to see. You want to see under the radar good games out of a guy like him. But one of those two guys or Matt Corral is the option for the Steelers this year. I don't see them going after a veteran quarterback, and I see them just sticking it out. But we'll go ahead and move on. This is a topic that Matt has been waiting for. We got Baker Mayfield, and here are the stats I got on him. 4 seasons, 59 starts, a 61.6% career completion percentage, 235 yards per game, 1.5 touchdowns per game, and 0.95 interceptions, which is essentially just an interception a game. No really rushing stats, obviously, to note. He has 27 career fumbles, and he's 1-1 in the playoffs. So, Matt, I'll let you go ahead and do your thing.
All right. Browns fan, diehard here. Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, is the guy of the future for the Cleveland Browns. I think he's very underrated. This season, I'm not going to try to defend him. He was bad this season. There's a lot of reasons why he was bad, and one of the main reasons is because he did have a torn labrum the entire year. If we look back at that Chiefs game in the first game of the season, he was the reason they were in that game. He had an amazing game, had a couple beautiful balls, and he kept him in that game the entire time. The interception at the end, he was trying to throw it away, and it was a bad decision. But I feel like a lot of people, I feel like the NFL in general, and this goes for a lot of sports, I think their run and how they gain new fans is by the casual fan. The casual fan is the most common type of fan in the NFL. I feel like we all here watch the NFL more and more in depthly than the average fan. So when people see all the stats and aren't really watching the game, Baker Mayfield's not looking too good. I mean, this season he wasn't very good. And there's a couple highlight plays, of course, OBJ's dad type of situation that goes headlines. And the Browns in general, Browns fans get very triggered about stuff, so they're always in the headlines. So it's when the league is run and the opinions are run by the casual fan, I feel like a lot of people get this narrative on Baker Mayfield that just isn't true. last season, Baker Mayfield was one of the sole reasons the Browns were so good. Kevin Stefanski, and I feel like another thing people aren't talking about is Kevin Stefanski last year was a great head coach, but he didn't really change it up this year. And I feel like people, when you're a rookie head coach, same with Matt Nagy, a lot of people don't know what to expect. Same like a rookie quarterback. That's why we see a lot of success with some rookie quarterbacks. This year, he kind of did this much of the same. It didn't really work out as much and wasn't really able to adjust, especially with Baker Mayfield's injury. He did not run a play action enough. There was a lot of stuff. And the Browns' wide receiving core this year was, in my opinion, one of the worst in football. Jarvis Landry was a shell of himself of last year and the years prior. Had about 400 yards, which is OBJ was an entire situation. I love OBJ, one of my favorite wide receivers of all time. Donovan Peoples-Jones was the best wide receiver in the Browns this year, and he was a 6th-round pick last year. He was a rookie last year, a 6th-round pick. And I'm not saying that doesn't discredit him. He's a really good wide receiver, but he should not be a wide receiver 1 on any team. I'm not going to try to make excuses for Baker Mayfield this year. He was injured, but he was not very good this year. Made a lot of poor decisions. But I feel like people are just jumping on this narrative that he's not the guy and they should move on from immediately. And I feel like that's just completely incorrect.
So my thing on Baker Mayfield is he is not a quarterback, in my opinion, that you're going to give a long-term extension to. I think if you're going to re-sign him, you give him a smaller deal, something like 2 years, maybe 3 years. Continue to let him prove himself. I'm pretty sure they picked up his 5th-year option, so they're going to be holding on to him, obviously, for now. I just think he's such a mediocre quarterback. He's not really shown a whole lot of being one of the top in the league. And at the end of the day, you're looking at a Browns team that has a tremendous run game, obviously with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, and that is the focal point of the offense, especially this season with Baker being hurt with his shoulder injury. So I don't see how you keep a quarterback that isn't a mobile guy when you have such a dominant run game, because I would imagine they're going to be holding on to those running backs for a little while. I think Kareem Hunt will come back after next year. I think they'll re-sign him. I think he's happy in the situation he's in. And like you said with the receivers this year, they were pretty bad overall. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I was really high on him in the draft. A lot of people called me an idiot for it, but he looked really good in college. And a lot of those receivers in college who are really good, physical receivers, jump up and steal balls out of the air, don't do so well in the NFL. But Peoples-Jones really extended his game and became a good receiver, a good route runner, and blew up. But yeah, Jarvis Landry didn't perform. The Odell Beckham situation, Odell is one of the best receivers in the league, period. There's no debate. As soon as he went to the Rams and had a good quarterback, he blew up. And obviously him and Stafford had struggles at the beginning with the connection, which as you would expect, it's new quarterback, new receiver. The chemistry's not there yet. But once they got a little bit of chemistry, Odell was really good, and he's still really good. Obviously, he's, other than Cooper Kupp, one of the biggest reasons that the Rams are in the Super Bowl right now. I mean, he really helped that offense extend. So I think you have to look at that Odell situation. You have to look at the running backs in Cleveland, and you have to wonder, what is Baker actually doing for this organization? What is he doing good for this organization? Because it feels like the run game is the big reason that offense has any success. And you see a receiver like Odell who can't have success with Baker and then has success with a good quarterback. So I think that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield's he's a kind of a tough quarterback to talk about, because there's a lot of ambiguous stuff. Because I've seen him make spectacular throws. He can make big time plays, and he can do it in big time moments too. But there's been a lot of inconsistency. His first year, obviously, was justification for his struggles. His first year, probably should have been rookie of the year, broke the record for touchdown passes by a rookie, and had a very good season turning that Browns team around. I got that mixed up with the second season. And then the second season, a lot of struggles, led the league in interceptions. I believe he threw 22, which was really, really bad. And there were a lot of reasons for that. Between Freddie Kitchens not being the guy and Baker Mayfield just playing poorly, there's a lot of blame to go around for the failures in that year. And then we come back in the third year, and now Cleveland makes the playoffs. Kevin Stefanski wins Coach of the Year. He has a lot of success, has his best season of his career. and showed a lot of upside where it's like, oh, okay, Cleveland is going to be a good team. And then a lot of people, including myself, were picking Cleveland as a dark horse Super Bowl team this year. I thought that they were going to improve even more, and they had a great opportunity to win the division. I picked them to win the division, and I picked them or Baltimore. But either way, I picked Cleveland to make the playoffs and really make a push. It didn't work out that way. Baker Mayfield got injured and played very poor football overall. Really struggled against Green Bay. He had a lot of struggle games, and part of it was receivers not getting open. Part of it was poor decision making, bad reads, and he really struggled to generate the kind of power on the football that he normally generates with that torn labrum. So I think it's important that they give him another year. Giving him his 5th-year option was a great decision by Cleveland. I think that was something they needed to do. And I think this is kind of a make or break year for Baker. If he performs well this year and proves that he can bounce back from the adversity he's had, I think he can convince Cleveland to give him a long-term deal. But if it's just a meh kind of thing, despite being healed up, I think it's time to move off of him. So we really need one more year on him.
Yeah, another thing I'll say is the Browns' offensive line is the best run blocking offensive line in the entire NFL. But there's a big difference in football as a good run blocking offensive line and a good pass blocking offensive line. And I feel like that's a little bit overrated. I of course, I'm a Browns fan. I think their offensive line is great. Their pass blocking has been questionable at times. But you're right. Baker Mayfield's injury isn't an excuse for his poor decision making. But one of the main things for Baker Mayfield has been his confidence. When he had Freddie Kitchens in his rookie year with I forget his name. Greg Roman, I think, was the interim head coach. Greg Williams, thank you. He was the interim head coach. There was a good connection between him and Baker. He had a lot of confidence. Freddie Kitchens, not so much. First year Stefanski had a lot of confidence. And then this year, the confidence was within himself with his injury. And Baker Mayfield, I feel like even if you don't like him, he is one of the most competitive people in the NFL. Has always been. You just look from his college career, just walk on twice. He bets on himself. And when you don't have confidence in yourself to be able to make the throws you've always been able to make with that injury, it's just not going to work. But being his competitive spirit, he's not going to just say, I'm going to sit out. And I feel like if you've ever played sports before and you really are passionate about it, you always want to be out there for your team because you know what you can bring to the team even if no one else does. So that's one of the things when people say, like, if he was injured, why didn't he just sit out? That's probably the main reason. He's a competitive player. But yeah.
Yeah, and like Randy, you made a really good point. I think getting the 5th-year option is huge, and I think this upcoming year is going to be a big indicator on what the Browns do at quarterback going forward. I think Baker is a solid quarterback. He is a guy that if you have a really good team around him, he can do a good enough job to make the team go far. But at the end of the day, with the pieces they have right now, I don't see him having a successful year next year. Maybe top 20 next year. He's just not that guy to me. I think he's in the bottom half of quarterbacks in the league, and I don't see him being in the top half next year or anytime in the near future.
Fair point. I mean, Baker Mayfield, I love Baker Mayfield. He's just so inconsistent. I mean, it's going to be tough, but I do believe in him. I think he'll bounce back next year. And I really hope when he bounces back, in my opinion, that the Browns they re-sign him. I think Baker Mayfield is not going to ask for one of those Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson type of deals. I think he'll take a kind of a team-friendly deal below $40 million, maybe to $35 to $32 million range. But we'll see. There's definitely mixed opinions around him in the NFL, but no one really knows.
I'm not sure Baker Mayfield's a $30 million quarterback. Right now he's a 20. Right now he is. But I'm saying if he has a good year next year, that's what the range he'll be in. If he has a really good year next year, like he'd have to really shell out next year to get over 30 million given his past struggles.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think at the moment, obviously at the moment he's not a quarterback you're giving an extension to. You just can't. You can't look at what he's done over the last couple of years and say, oh yeah, that's the guy I'm going to pay big money to. But yeah, Matt, you got a good point. If he does have a tremendous year next year, if the team has a lot of success, you could see him reining in 30 mil a year. But I can't see him getting more than that, to be honest. I don't think he's worth it. I think 20 to 25 is a perfect range for him, especially with that's giving him sufficient money for having a good year next year if that was to happen, while also accounting for the fact that he struggled earlier in his career, and that's giving him a shot. So you don't extend Baker Mayfield more than 4 years, I don't think. I think that would be a mistake. But if he has a good year, maybe you keep it going with him and just hope that he's good enough to make the team competitive.
Yeah.
That was a long episode, boys.
Yeah, it was. We'll have to organize just a little better for the next one, for sure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you all for watching. See you next time.